The idea of making an erasable ink pen is probably one of those things that people have been trying for a very long time. But does the Pilot FriXion become erasable by cheating? Stay tuned to find out.
Welcome to Stationery Test Drive, where no tool is safe in our grubby little artistic hands from doing strange things and wonderful things with even what seems to be the most normal looking modern pen I've ever seen. I'm Vishal.
This is Minjal.
I'm Samir.
And this, yes, is the Pilot FriXion Ball 0.7 Erasable. Now that sounds weird, and it is weird, because even though it's a ball pen, that's probably also actually a gel pen, and Samir will explain why later. This is also an erasable pen, and I kept thinking, okay, where's the eraser? Because, usually an eraser is over there, but that didn't work. So that was false advertising, and I just I hit my hand against it like a caveman for a while, and then Samir pointed out, hey, it's the other end. And that right there, I think is just, well, here's why it should be the other end, Samir said, because that nicely clips in there, and that's a feature, not a bug. And yes, this is the feature. This is the magic feature of the Pilot FriXion, which, yes, does actually erase when you apply a bit of friction.
And a fair amount of pressure.
Well, yes, the friction is the result, the pressure is the action. For more scientific things, such as telling us why this is both a ball pen and a gel pen, Samir?
The fact of the matter is all gel pens are ball pens in that they have a metal ball at the tip. We've talked about this before in various episodes. I think the reason why this could be called more of a gel pen is because I know that the ink is a special ink that is erasable in the way that Vishal has just demonstrated. And I know that this ink is very much water-based, which is a feature of gel pens. Ball pens, traditionally at least, have been an oil-based medium. So I guess the Pilot FriXion is a gel pen, but with an erasable ink.
And that erasable ink is odd because you can't just use any eraser on it. You kind of have to use this rubberized head. I guess it is rubberized, or it's some kind of rubber-like thing. And I think the clue as to how it works is in the name, isn't it?
It is. So the Pilot FriXion ink is really the trick here. It is a magic trick. Let's face it, this is a fairly standard colored gel pen, ball pen. As a product, it very much depends on the gimmick of it being erasable. And don't get us wrong, it is a good gimmick. What's unique about this is actually not the pen itself, but the ink that it uses. And these inks, which Pilot came up with, I think sometime in the early 2000s, is actually a thermo-sensitive ink. So what happens is that it puts down a color on a piece of paper, and you're not actually erasing something. When you increase the temperature of the ink beyond a certain level, it essentially loses its color.
So the ink is still there. The ink is not gone away. It's just disappeared.
Exactly. And that's why I said that the Pilot FriXion is an erasable ink by cheating. Because it's not actually being erased at all.
Well, you can get through 4 layers of it, so that kind of proves your theory in that I'm not rubbing it away. I'm just turning this ink white.
Exactly.
Is it on a similar principle to the kind of ink killers we used to have back in the day, or those were chemical reactions?
So this is where I guess we can go into an entire side note here about invisible inks, because when
it's a reverse invisible ink.
It is, and it is reversible. We'll get to that. When we were younger and we had royal blue fountain pen inks, you had this sort of solvent-based, transparent pen that was called an ink killer. And that worked by actually kind of disrupting the dyes in the ink chemically.
Yeah.
This works purely based on temperature.
Okay. And the ink killer, I remember teachers used to hate it because after a while, the ink would come back.
Exactly.
So it was kind of useless in the long term, especially in a school year where you kind of have to keep your notes for a year.
Yeah. So there is a similar problem, but less so here. The ink killer used to chemically disrupt the ink, and the problem was that once the solvent that you applied on it kind of evaporated away, you would have this kind of faint ghost image of what you had written before. The friction ink is thermo-sensitive. So what you're actually doing is, this is a slightly flexible piece of rubber. And when you do this fast enough, you are increasing the temperature of the surface of the paper.
Okay. So
above 60 degrees centigrade.
Theoretically, I could use an actual eraser, but if I rubbed it furiously there, it could work, but not.
I have tried it out, but usual erasers are meant to
break apart,
and so they do not actually cause enough friction to do this.
Erasers are meant to sort of lift off the medium and then kind of sacrifice themselves and go away in those little eraser grubbing.
So the cheat about this erasable ink is that it's not actually erasable; it's an invisible ink. So what we should compare it to, if you were a kid at some point and were playing with invisible inks, the simplest one used to be lemon juice. And if you've ever played with that, this is kind of the same process. So an invisible ink using lemon or lime juice, if you don't know, is that you take a lemon or lime juice and write with it.
Yes.
And of course you can't see anything, it's invisible. But by heating it up over a flame or any sort of higher source of heat, I think you would probably have to hit like 70-80 degrees. The writing would appear in kind of a brown.
Basically, there are chemicals in the lemon juice that denature and then
yes,
turn into
and in the case of lemon juice, that was not reversible. The thing about the friction ink is that if you take the temperature above 60 degrees, it disappears. But it's only disappearing, it's not actually being erased. If we took this sheet and now put it into our freezer, at which point the temperature would go below 10 at some point, that will start reappearing again.
Okay. Well, I think, we have alienated pretty much every artist in the audience with our geekery. So let's try to bring some of them back by showing them the test drives we do, which is because that's what we do on the show. We take things like this, but we take them on artistic test drives. Now, Samir and I are geeks, so obviously we're going to geek out about this. But Minjal, show us what you did with the Pilot FriXion. Now that is a lovely example of both line control and furious rubbing.
So we've used several fineliners which work really well against, for drawing lines against, say, a steel ruler or plastic ruler.
Yeah.
This one, ball pen, gel pen, whatever this is, had the usual problems of smudging, bleeding. The color is a little grey. It's not quite, I don't necessarily like the colors that are used in the ink, but I'm guessing this is a special ink, so they had to make it grey.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the pigment does suffer, and this is a bit behind the scenes, but we shoot these in groups, and we have another pen coming up that has these wonderfully vibrant colors. So yes, in comparison to that, especially, you notice that it's a bit grayer, and because we're highly sensitive to this, we do.
I think this, as Minjal said, this has very much to do with the fact that this ink needs to be special for it to be erasable. The thing about inks that we have tried to work at for thousands of years since we invented inks is to make them more stable and more insensitive to temperature, more vibrant, darker to read and look at. And here now you have this unique situation where you need to make an ink that is more unstable so that it could be reversed.
Also, while I was using, the eraser, I kept wondering why. It's great technology-wise, but why do we, as artists, I didn't really see the uses of this. If you're taking notes and if you want to erase something,
right?
Really, like if you're sitting in a meeting and if you have to vigorously scrub with your, shoulders hurting, upper upper arms hurting, then I don't know, does it really serve the purpose? Sure, it's gimmicky,
Minjal,
technology is great.
It establishes dominance. If you do that in a meeting, then people will, they'll be like, I won't mess with her. She's, clearly knows what she's doing.
Our other tips for establishing dominance during business meetings will be coming up next year.
So it's a great gimmicky, technologically advanced product from Pilot. I much rather prefer normal gel pens, and also I did try erasing graphite pencil, writing with this, and that clearly obviously didn't work. It's not supposed to work. It just turned out to be a grey ugly mess. I tried erasing these lines with the Natraj Plasto eraser. That didn't work either. So this is a match made in stationery heaven. You keep these two together for life.
There must be someone who, wants to establish dominance in meetings, but also use it. Look, I know we come across this offer that we are not the perfect audience for this. We are the artistic side of things.
I think we need to establish, while we are talking about this, who this pen is probably for. It's not for us as artists. I think that's fairly clear. And you will see that with our other tests as well. There are uses for it in art, for sure. But it's not really the ideal pen for art.
Yeah, I will say that I did not really use the eraser at all. So from my point of view, and I might as well show you my test right now. I did an illustration, and I don't think I may have used the eraser part of it on maybe a couple of places. Maybe I don't even remember, because I just used it as inks. And yes, as inks, they're kind of grey. They're kind of, back in the day, you'd get inks this grey, and those were the cheap fountain pen, the cheap gel pens and the cheap ball pens. This is not that bad, I must say. If you want a kind of like a nice mossy green or a nice, I use the purple and the blue. They're not bad. They're just not something that I would reach for if I had other choices.
True.
And the eraser part of it is pretty much useless to me, especially now that I know that, it's not temperature sensitive. So on an archival level, this is not something that I would use for art, which has, let's say, a longer life than a document or a notepad where you're just kind of like, okay, it's rough notes, you don't need to use it. For rough notes, it's perfectly fine. It's very good to use. It's nice and smooth. It's, Pilot is one of the leaders in not penmanship, but pen manufactureship. Pen armada-ness? I don't know.
I think pen manufacturership is close enough. Pilot is, by the way, the largest manufacturer of pens in Japan. So they are not a small company.
Yeah, and this was a pretty decent task to just put this together over a pencil drawing, of course. Did not use the eraser side of it at all. Enjoyed the fine lininess of it. Enjoyed the general, the ability to just like put down strokes. And the build-up of strokes is also not terrible. There's a certain, the waxiness is only there, let's say, in the first pass of things. And then once you build up, you can get higher saturations, but it never becomes super vibrant. And we talked about Krishna inks last time, which were like super vibrant fountain pen inks. Like I said, we've got another pen coming up in a couple of weeks that is very vibrant, and all the better for it. But yeah, this was fun, but also, if it's the pen you have in your hand, like people say about cameras, it's the one you have in your hand, not that's the best camera you have. If this is what you have, yes, this is better than a lot of really crappy ball pens out there. But yeah, it's, that rubber is at least like fun to just like twiddle around sometimes for me. I'm not using it, but it's there.
I usually, look at a lot of Pinterest and YouTube videos for reference whenever I make my pieces. Now, all the videos that I've seen so far about the Pilot FriXion have mostly been swatches. They've just been basic tests, erasing out portions. I've not really seen anybody do any kind of art with it.
Right.
So I believe the utility lies in the fact that you write with it, you erase it's some gimmicky, scrapbook doodling stationery object, not so much for art at all. And you want to show us your piece, which is maybe not art?
Yes, I will. And anyway, this is what I came up with, and I've returned to making giant letters after a long time, for those who missed me. And I quite enjoyed using this, and maybe I will talk about why exactly. First of all, of course, just drawing large letters and getting this sort of nice even line across all of it is not actually always an easy thing to do.
No.
And what I can say about this is that I found it very easy to make these nice parallel lines. In some cases, it was easier to use this than
A
a fine liner, because I felt that it was more forgiving. The thing about a fine liner is that because of its felt tip, you kind of have to be very precise when you're using it and have this even speed, otherwise you start getting little blotches, and every little vibration in your hand shows up. Whereas what I found with this was that it had this very kind of smooth gliding motion. So I think let me go over what I think this is good for on the art side of things. I think that it can produce some very even lines if you are not very precise with more sensitive tools. The thing that I found about it, Vishal and Minjal are absolutely right. The inks that this has are kind of grey. That's the nature of the beast when it comes to, I guess, making it sensitive to temperature. But because of that, the inks that are used in here are also kind of, I'll say, waxy. And the closest thing I can describe this as, when you're doing these kind of parallel lines, it feels like you're using a fine liner crayon. Is the pressure that you feel when you're drawing it. That can be quite useful when you're doing something like this. As an artist, I think this can be extremely useful for hatching. Because you can hatch and it has that kind of waxy feeling which gives you this more comfortable even line. The other thing, which I don't know if it will show up on camera, Vishal will zoom in later, is that you can have negative hatching with the eraser, which you will see here. So I've kind of hatched with the eraser to kind of rub out white lines. And that can actually be very useful, because when you're cross-hatching with a fine liner or a positive pen, you're only adding darkness as you cross-hatch further. Whereas here you can cross-hatch and make it lighter.
Right.
Which you can't do with any other instrument. You can't remove while you crosshatch.
Yeah, especially what the result is, you almost get something like stippling, but along a line.
Exactly. You get dots and dashes which you would never be able to make if you were actually physically drawing the dots and
things
dashes.
That you can only get from some kind of subtractive medium like a lino cut or an etching.
Exactly. So there's something very unique about what you could do with this when it comes to being an artist and doing cross-hatching. I think for that, you should try one out if you are into cross-hatching. Now, what it's for beyond artists, and yes, it's not maybe made for artists really. I mean, that's not what they designed it for. Yes, it's a gimmick for sure. But I think for maybe students who need to have their notebook be okay for a year and then they don't care what it looks like, or for people who are into journaling and want to have something that they wrote be perfectly neat, or remove something and add something, this is great. Now, I don't know whether it's archival in the realm of, 50 years and 100 years, but beyond, between the temperatures of 60 and -10, it seems to be fine.
The other thing we need to add is that, we have just discovered this particular stationery object, but these have been around for some time. The FriXion range actually also covers color pencils. These erasers are available as standalone erasers. Also, these can be replaced. So, if the plug is worn out, or, you can actually...
Who is pressing it down that hard that is going to wear out is the question. Because
well, I'm guessing
hardy.
the stippling or cross-hatching.
And also, I assume it depends on what kind of paper you use it on.
Right, we are using it on smooth paper.
This is quite smooth paper, but on a tough watercolor or cartridge paper, I'm sure it can wear out.
So what we can do actually is maybe test the color pencils. they may be, a better medium to test out the eraser.
Yes, because as I said, the texture of it as you put down a mark is very much crayon-like, and maybe that would work better for artists, especially in a pencil medium where there's a thicker, medium to work with.
And it won't be grey.
I'm wondering though what the range of colors are, because I'd be curious to see if they have a gold or a silver or something. Maybe there the waxiness, it's almost a metallic waxiness is what I found when I put down a swatch.
Similar to Bruce True, maybe.
Yes, but better, I think, and that more controllable.
I haven't looked into this, but I'm guessing it would be fairly complicated to make a metallic ink
that is also
turn invisible.
Yes, that's the, if you're a geeky scientist who works with inks, please get right on that and give us all the credit.
Just to go into a quick little bit of history, the friction inks and range are only about 20-30 years old as far as Pilot is concerned. But the idea of inks that change color, because that's essentially what this is. Yes, it becomes invisible, but technically it's an ink that changes from blue to transparent or red to transparent, is actually not that new. The first color changing inks were invented back in 1975. I think they were called Morpho or something to do with metamorphosis. And if you were a kid in the 80s, at some point you would have had a Hot Wheels car or a rubber ducky or whatever, which would change color if you put it in hot water versus cold water.
So if you're cool, you got that range of G.I. Joes.
This is using exactly the same technique.
If only we could, draw out and decorate our action figures with these, then the circle would be complete.
I'm guessing there are going to be, permanent, or, well, I don't know if an ink that goes invisible can be called permanent, but a permanent marker that can be used to draw over action figures must be coming up soon, I'm sure.
Well, coming up soon from us at Inky Memo are more test drives and other things as well. That's a teaser for what you can look forward to in the next few weeks and months. But for now, please follow us at the links on screen where you can see this art in more detail at our social handles. And please follow Inky Memo online as well as at the website where there are transcripts of many of these episodes now, as well as a newsletter that we send out by email and that has full of stories of wonderful things just like this. But yeah, until next time, I'm Vishal.
This is Minjal.
I'm Samir. And if you liked this episode, you really should look at the first episode we did on a gel pen, one of our favorite gel pens, the Rorito Fasti. And if you like me drawing giant numbers and letters, and you like colored pencils, you should really look at our Stedler Luna episode. Vishal?
We didn't make this joke, so, rub it out.